I woke up with a freezing alien in my bed, and 5 hours until rescue arrived. By the time help came, neither of us wanted to be rescued from each other anymore. Jake woke up that Friday morning feeling like something was off. You know that weird sensation when you're not quite awake but your brain is telling you that something in your room isn't right? That was exactly how he felt. His eyes were still heavy with sleep, and the early morning sun was just starting to peek through his curtains. He stretched his arms above his head, and that's when he felt it. There was extra weight on his bed, not like his cat had jumped up or anything. This was different. This was significant weight. Right there near his feet, his heart started beating faster. Jake lived alone in his small apartment downtown, so there shouldn't be anyone else here. Well, not exactly alone. He'd signed up for this wild program 3 months ago called the Intergalactic Student Program. Yeah, you heard that right. Actual aliens living with humans as part of some cultural exchange thing. It sounded crazy when he first heard about it, but the government was paying good money for people willing to host these visitors from other planets. Jake needed the cash, and honestly, he thought it might be interesting. His roommate was named Zix. Try saying that 3 times fast. Zix came from some planet that Jake could never pronounce correctly. Even after 3 months of practice, the alien was pretty cool though, kept to themselves mostly. They had this special room that Jake's landlord had converted from an old storage space. It had all these weird machines that controlled the air and temperature to match Zix's home planet. The two of them were polite to each other, said good morning when they passed in the hallway. But that was about it. Jake worked long hours at his job, and Zix was always busy with their research or whatever they did all day. But now, as Jake's eyes finally adjusted to the dim light, he could see clearly what was on his bed. It was Zix, curled up right at the foot of his mattress. The alien's skin, which was usually this bright glowing teal color, looked dull and grayish. Instead of the normal, soft glow they gave off, Zix looked almost faded, like a light bulb that's about to burn out. Jake sat up slowly, trying not to freak out. His mind was racing with questions. Why was Zix in his bed? Had something happened? Was this normal for their species? Maybe this was some kind of alien custom he didn't know about? The orientation packet the program gave him was like 200 pages long, and honestly, Jake had skimmed most of it. Zix, Jake said softly, his voice still rough from sleep. Hey buddy, you okay? All 3 of Zix's eyes opened at once. That was still something Jake was getting used to. 3 eyes that could all look in different directions at the same time. Right now, all 3 were focused on him, and even without being an expert on alien emotions, Jake could tell something was wrong. Each eye seemed to be showing a different feeling. One looked scared, another looked embarrassed, and the third one had this expression that Jake couldn't quite figure out. There was this little device that Zix wore around their neck, like a pendant. It was their translator, the thing that let them communicate with humans. The device made a soft beeping sound, and then Zix's voice came through, though it always sounded a bit robotic and mechanical. Deep apologies. Jake friend, the translator said. Thermal regulation unit has failed during night hours. My body temperature dropped to dangerous levels. Your bed radiates heat signature that my sensors detected. Survival instinct activated without conscious thought. Please forgive this intrusion into your private space. Jake's brain took a second to process all of that. So basically, Zix's heating system broke down. They got too cold, and their body automatically led them to the warmest spot in the apartment, which happened to be Jake's bed. That actually made sense. Jake ran pretty warm naturally, and his bed was basically like a heating pad by morning with all the blankets he used. But then the seriousness of the situation hit him. Zix wasn't just being weird or invading his space for no reason. This was actually dangerous for them. Jake noticed now that Zix was shaking, or at least doing whatever passed for shaking in their species. Their whole body seemed to be vibrating slightly, and that dull gray color was definitely not healthy looking. Okay, don't worry about it, Jake said, throwing off his covers and jumping out of bed. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand. Let me call someone. There's got to be an emergency number or something. He fumbled with his phone, searching through his contacts for anything related to the program. Finally, he found it. ISP Emergency Hotline. He'd saved it when he first signed up but never thought he'd actually need to use it. His fingers were shaking a little as he dialed. What if this was really serious? What if Zeke's was in actual danger? The phone rang twice before someone picked up. A tired-sounding woman answered, and Jake quickly explained the situation. Zeke's heating unit broke. They're cold. They ended up in his bed. What should he do? The woman on the phone, who sounded like she'd handled about 1,000 of these calls before, started asking questions. What color was Zeke's skin? Were they responsive? Could they move? Jake answered everything while looking at Zeke's, who was watching him with those 3 eyes, still shaking on his bed. All right, the technician finally said. Here's the situation. We've got a major power issue affecting the whole downtown grid right now. Multiple alien habitats are affected. I can't get a repair team to you until at least noon. Maybe later. Jake looked at his phone. It was barely 7 in the morning. That's like 5 hours from now. What am I supposed to do until then? Your guest needs to maintain a core temperature of at least 89 degrees Fahrenheit, the woman explained. If they drop below that, they could go into something called emergency stasis. It's like a coma for their species. Very dangerous if it happens without proper preparation. Jake's stomach dropped. This was way more serious than he thought. So, what do I do? Crank up the heat? Get more blankets? Human body heat will work, the technician said. But it needs to be constant, close contact. Your guest will need to stay near you until we can get there. I know it's uncomfortable, but it's the safest option right now. Jake hung up the phone and looked at Zeke's, who seemed to understand what the technician had said. The translator pendant glowed softly and Zeke's voice came through again, quieter this time. This is causing great social discomfort for you. In my culture, physical closeness is reserved only for family units and life partners. This situation brings me much shame. I will attempt to manage with blankets only. But Jake could see that Zeke's was getting worse. The shaking was more noticeable now, and their skin had gone from grayish to almost completely pale. He thought about just leaving Zeke's there with blankets, going about his morning, keeping his distance. That would be easier. Less weird. But then he imagined coming back to find Zeke's in that stasis thing. Maybe hurt or worse because Jake was too uncomfortable to help. No way, Jake said firmly. He walked to his closet and pulled out every blanket he owned. Look, I'm not going to let you go into some alien coma in my apartment because we're both too awkward to deal with this. We'll figure it out. He piled the blankets on the bed and climbed back in, keeping a respectful distance but close enough that Zeke's could feel the warmth. He grabbed his laptop from his desk. If he was going to be stuck in bed for 5 hours, he might as well try to get some work done. Zeke slowly moved a bit closer, and Jake could feel how cold they actually were. It was like sitting next to an air conditioner. The first hour was incredibly awkward. Jake typed on his laptop, pretending to focus on emails while very aware that there was an alien pressed against his side. Zeke's didn't move much, just breathed slowly, their skin gradually getting a tiny bit less pale. Neither of them spoke. The only sound was the clicking of Jake's keyboard and the quiet hum of Zeke's translator pendant. But then Jake made the mistake of yawning, and Zeke's middle eye focused on him. You are tired. I have disrupted your sleep cycle. More apologies. It's fine, Jake said. I wasn't sleeping that great anyway. Which was true. Jake never slept well these days. Too much on his mind, too much stress from work, too much of everything. Why do you not sleep well? Zeke's asked. Their voice through the translator always sounded curious, like a child asking questions about everything. Jake shrugged, still looking at his laptop screen. Just life stuff, you know? Work is stressful. Got a lot going on. There was a pause, and then Zeke's said something that surprised him. In my observations of the past 93 days, you do not seem to have much going on, as you say. You go to work, return home, eat alone, sleep alone, repeat cycle. On rest days, you remain in apartment alone. This seems like very small life for a human. Jake stopped typing. That was way more direct than he expected. And honestly, it stung a little because it was true. When had his life become so small? He used to have friends, used to go out, used to actually enjoy things. Now he just existed, going through the motions day after day. Yeah, well, Jake said defensively, some of us don't have time for big social lives. Bills don't pay themselves. But you have time now, Zeeks pointed out. Force time together. Perhaps we could use it for something other than awkward silence? Jake couldn't help but smile a little at that. You think this is awkward? Try being a human with an alien in your bed. No offense. None taken. Try being an alien who is cold-blooded, trapped in a warm-blooded creature's sleeping space, violating every social protocol of your culture. I believe my awkwardness exceeds yours. And just like that, the tension broke a little. Jake actually laughed. And he heard this strange sound from Zix that might have been their version of laughing too. He closed his laptop and turned slightly to face them. Okay, you want to do something? Let's watch something. You ever seen any Earth movies? Zix's 3 eyes brightened slightly. I have observed some human entertainment. Much of it confuses me. Why do humans enjoy watching other humans experience terrible situations? You mean like horror movies or dramas? Yes. Also, why do romantic partnerships in your entertainment always involve such conflict? On my world, if two beings wish to bond, they simply bond. No dramatic revelations or misunderstandings. Jake pulled up a streaming service on his laptop. Okay, that's actually a fair point. How about documentaries? You like learning about stuff? They spent the next 2 hours watching a nature documentary about ocean life. Zix asked a million questions. Why did sharks need to keep swimming? How did jellyfish exist without brains? What evolutionary purpose did the anglerfish's light serve? Some questions Jake could answer, most he couldn't. But it was actually kind of fun, seeing Earth through Zix's eyes. Things that seemed normal to Jake were absolutely fascinating to them. During a part about dolphins, Zix said something that caught Jake off guard. These creatures live in family pods. They stay together, communicate constantly, protect each other. Your species also evolved to be social, yes? Yeah. Humans are pretty social, Jake agreed. Then why do you choose isolation? Zix asked. Not just you specifically. I have observed many humans in this city. They live in buildings with hundreds of other humans but rarely interact. They have devices that connect them to billions of others but seem more alone than ever. It is very confusing to me. Quote, Jake didn't have a good answer for that. He thought about his own life, how he'd basically cut himself off from everyone over the past year, after his relationship ended badly, after that big fight with his mom, after his college friends all seemed to move on with their lives without him. It just seemed easier to be alone. No drama, no disappointment, no one to let down. Sometimes being alone is just easier, Jake finally said. People are complicated. They hurt you, let you down, expect things from you that you can't give them. Zix was quiet for a moment, their skin rippling with colors that Jake had learned meant they were thinking deeply. On my planet, we have a saying. It translates roughly to cold alone is colder than cold together. Our species is cold-blooded. We need external heat to survive. Alone, we are always cold. Together, we share warmth and manage better. That's pretty poetic for a species that talks through a robot pendant, Jake said, but he understood what Zix meant. Around 11 o'clock, Jake's stomach started growling loudly. He hadn't eaten anything since yesterday evening, and apparently his body was making sure everyone knew about it. Zix's middle eye focused on his stomach area, with what looked like concern. Your digestive system is making distress sounds, Zix observed. Should I be worried about imminent biological failure? Oh, Jake laughed. No. That's just my body's way of saying I'm hungry. I should probably make some breakfast. Or lunch. Whatever meal this counts as now. He started to get up, but Zix's skin immediately started fading again. The temperature drop was instant. Jake could actually see them begin to shake again as soon as he moved away. Okay, change of plans, Jake said quickly, settling back down. The color slowly returned to Zeke's skin. How about we both go to the kitchen? You can stick close to me while I cook. Would that work? I do not wish to be a burden, Zeke said. But their voice sounded weaker through the translator. You're not a burden, you're just cold. Come on. They made their way to the kitchen together. Which was honestly pretty funny. Jake shuffling along with an alien pressed against his side, trying to reach the refrigerator without either of them falling over. Zix's body was still cool to the touch, but definitely warmer than before. The close contact was working. Jake decided to make grilled cheese sandwiches because they were simple, and he could make them without too much complicated movement. Zix watched with fascination as he buttered the bread and heated up the pan. They asked questions about every step. Why butter? Why this specific cheese? Why apply heat from below instead of above? It was like cooking with a very curious scientist. On my world, we do not prepare food with heat, Zix explained. We consume mineral compounds in their natural state. The concept of transforming food through temperature application is very strange to me. Well, so you're telling me you've been living here for 3 months and never tried cooked food? Jake asked, flipping the sandwich in the pan. I did not think it would be appropriate. Also, my digestive system is very different from yours. Many earth foods could make me ill. Jake thought about that while his sandwich cooked. Here was Zeke's, living in a completely alien world. Eating paste from tubes, staying in one small converted room, trying so hard not to bother anyone or take up space, kind of like what Jake had been doing, now that he thought about it. Different reasons, same result. Both of them living small, isolated lives in the middle of a huge city full of people. The sandwich was done, golden brown and perfect. Jake cut it in half and sat at his small kitchen table. Zix settled next to him, pulling out one of their meal tubes from the pocket of their strange robe-like clothing. It was this metallic silver tube that they squeezed, and gray paste came out. It looked absolutely disgusting. That looks absolutely disgusting, Jake said honestly. It tastes of minerals and trace compounds, Zix replied. It is not about enjoyment. It is about sustenance. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Jake's phone was sitting on the table, and it kept lighting up with notifications. Text messages, mostly. One from his ex-girlfriend asking if he'd thought about what she said last week. One from his mom saying she was worried about him. One from his old college roommate trying to organize a reunion that Jake had been ignoring for 2 months. Zix noticed him staring at the phone with a stressed expression. Those small devices cause humans much anxiety. I have observed this in many humans. They look at screens and their body language changes to distress. It's not the device, Jake said. It's the people. They want things from me. Want me to respond. To care. To show up. To be something I'm not anymore. What are you now? Zix asked simply. Jake hadn't expected such a direct question. He looked down at his half-eaten sandwich. I don't know. Tired? Disconnected? I used to be fun. I think. Used to care about stuff. Now I just feel kind of empty most of the time. Zix's skin shifted to a deep blue color that Jake had never seen before. The translator was quiet for a moment, then spoke. That color I just displayed, there is no perfect human word for it. It means something like recognition of shared pain. I understand what you describe. You feel empty too? Jake asked, surprised. But you're here doing this whole exchange program, research, all this important stuff, important to others perhaps. Zeke said. I volunteered for this program to escape my own planet. There were expectations there, relationships that failed, family who did not understand me. I thought distance would help. Instead, I just brought the emptiness with me to a new world. Jake looked at Zeke's with completely new eyes. All this time, he'd assumed the alien was fine, that they were handling everything well, that they were busy and fulfilled. It never occurred to him that Zix might be struggling too, that they might be lonely, might be hiding, might be just as lost as he was. So we're both just hiding out here, Jake said slowly. Me in my apartment, you in your converted room. Both of us avoiding our lives. It would appear so, Zix agreed. Though this morning's equipment failure has made hiding difficult. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Jake said. He picked up his phone and looked at the messages again. His mom's text said she missed him and hoped he was taking care of himself. His college friend's message included a photo from 5 years ago. All of them laughing at some party, young and happy and full of life. Even his ex's message, annoying as it was, at least meant someone was thinking about him. I've been treating everyone like they're trying to hurt me, Jake said quietly. But maybe they're just trying to connect. And I'm so scared of getting hurt again that I'm not letting anyone in. Not even you. And you literally live here. Zeke's skin rippled with multiple colors. I have been doing the same. Staying in my room, being invisible, trying not to intrude on your life. I convinced myself I was being respectful. Perhaps I was just being afraid. Afraid of what? Jake asked. Rejection. Bothering you. Being seen as a burden. If I stayed small and quiet, you could not decide you did not want me here. But also, we could not become actual companions. It was protection, but also isolation. Right at 12:30, the doorbell rang. Jake and Zix had moved back to the living room couch, still sitting close together. Zix's color had improved significantly over the past few hours. They weren't completely back to their normal bright teal, but the grayish tone was mostly gone. Jake opened the door to find a woman in a technician's uniform, carrying a large toolbox. She had short gray hair and looked like she'd been doing this job for a very long time. Her name tag said Maria. You the one with the thermal unit failure? She asked, walking in without waiting for an invitation. Yeah, that's us, Jake said. My roommate Zix had issues overnight. Maria pulled out some kind of scanning device and waved it around Zix, who was still sitting on the couch. The device beeped and showed a bunch of numbers that meant nothing to Jake. Maria raised her eyebrows and looked between the two of them. Well, temperature's stable now. Actually better than stable. Bonding hormone levels are elevated. Stress markers are way down. You two have a good morning together or something? Jake felt his face get warm. We just, talked. Watched some documentaries. Made lunch. Uh-huh, Maria said, smirking a little. She headed toward Zeke's room with her toolbox. Mind if I check out the unit? While Maria worked on the equipment in the other room, Jake and Zix sat awkwardly on the couch. The apartment suddenly felt too quiet. They could hear Maria muttering to herself, and the sound of tools against metal. These equipment failures, Zeke said quietly. They happen with some frequency in the program. I have heard other exchange guests discuss them. Some say they are tests, though not official ones. Tests for what? Jake asked. To see if hosts truly care for their guests, or if they view them merely as income sources or curiosities. Some hosts, when faced with crisis, choose to distance themselves, call authorities and remove themselves from the situation entirely. Those matches typically end early. Jake felt something heavy settle in his chest. He understood what Zeke was saying. This morning had been a test, just not one administered by the program. It was a test of whether Jake actually saw Zeke as a person, or just as a weird alien thing living in his apartment taking up space. Maria came back out, wiping her hands on a rag. All right. Found the problem. Coolant line got a crack in it. Probably from the power surge we had last night. All fixed now. Should be good to go. She started packing up her tools, then paused and looked at them again. You know, I do about 20 of these service calls a week. Visit a lot of host homes. You two seem different than most matches I see. Different how? Jake asked. Most hosts and guests are polite to each other. Respectful. But there's this distance. You know? Like co-workers sharing an office. You two actually seem like you might become friends or something. That's pretty rare, especially only 3 months in. She headed toward the door, then turned back one more time. Oh, I meant to ask. Either of you ever think about requesting a transfer? It's pretty common. If the match isn't working out, the program makes it easy to switch. We've got a whole system for it. Jake felt Zix go very still beside him. He suddenly realized that Zix had probably been expecting this conversation all morning, waiting for Jake to say that this was too weird, too much, that they should probably find Zix a new host, someone less broken, less isolated, less likely to disappoint them. Actually, Jake said. And he saw Zix's skin start to fade slightly. I was wondering about something else. What's the process for extending an exchange beyond the standard year? The reaction from Zix was immediate and dramatic. Their skin exploded in colors that Jake had never seen before. Bright purples, warm golds, vibrant greens all swirling together. The translator pendant seemed to struggle, flashing different words rapidly: joy, confusion, hope, disbelief, gratitude. Maria laughed, a genuine warm sound. Well, that's definitely a first for me this month. Usually takes hosts at least 6 months before they even consider extension. You two really did speedrun the bonding process. She pulled out a tablet from her bag. I can send you the forms if you want. Both parties have to agree. Of course. And there's some paperwork, but it's not complicated. After Maria left, Jake and Zix just sat there on the couch. The apartment felt different now, like something had shifted in the air. Zix's colors had settled into a warm, steady glow. You were not planning to request my transfer? Zix finally asked. Were you planning to request one? Jake countered. Yes, Zix admitted. I assumed I was a burden to you, that you would prefer a less complicated living situation. I was preparing the forms in my mind all morning. Jake shook his head. I thought the same thing about me, that you'd rather have a host who actually talked to you, who made an effort, who wasn't such a mess. So we were both preparing to end something that neither of us actually wanted to end, Zix said. This seems very inefficient. Super inefficient, Jake agreed. We wasted 3 whole months basically avoiding each other. Perhaps not entirely wasted, Zix said. We needed those 3 months to be ready for this morning. If the thermal unit had failed on day 1, we might not have responded the same way. That was probably true. 3 months ago, Jake might have panicked and called an ambulance and let someone else handle it. He might have seen it as a problem to be solved, not a person who needed help, and Zix might have been too scared and overwhelmed to even explain what was happening. Still, Jake said, we should probably stop being such hermits. Both of us. What do you think about actually hanging out sometimes? Like, on purpose? This is acceptable to me, Zix said, their skin rippling with pleased colors. Perhaps we could establish a regular schedule, 1 evening per week, dedicated to cultural exchange activities. How about Thursday nights? Jake suggested. We could take turns. 1 week we watch human movies. Next week you show me whatever you do for entertainment on your planet. I accept these terms, Zix said formally. But their skin was glowing brighter than Jake had ever seen it. They spent the rest of the afternoon just talking. Really talking. Not just the polite small talk they'd been doing for 3 months. Zix told Jake about their planet, about their family, about the pressures they'd felt to follow a certain life path. Jake talked about his failed relationship, about the fight with his mom, about how he'd slowly cut everyone out of his life because it seemed easier than risking more pain. 3 months later, Jake's apartment looked completely different. There were photos on the walls now, including one of Jake and Zix at some ISP event, both of them looking awkward but happy. Zix's converted room still existed, but the door was usually open. They'd made the living room more of a shared space, with both human and alien comfort items scattered around. It was a Thursday night, which meant cultural exchange night. This week was Zix's turn, and they'd set up their holographic projector in the living room. They were showing Jake some kind of artistic performance from their planet that involved light patterns and sound frequencies. Jake didn't really understand it, but Zix was so excited explaining everything that it didn't matter. Jake's phone buzzed on the coffee table. A message from his mom asking if she could visit next weekend. 6 months ago, Jake would have ignored it or made an excuse. Now he typed back, "Sure, that would be great." Fair warning, my roommate is an alien, literally. You are communicating with your mother? Zeeks asked, pausing the holographic display. Yeah, she wants to visit. That okay with you? More than okay. I am curious to observe human family dynamics in person. Zeeks tilted their head, all three eyes focusing on Jake. You have been communicating with her more frequently in recent weeks, also with your former college companions. This is positive development. It was true. After that morning when the thermal unit broke, Jake had started reaching out to people again. Slowly at first, just responding to messages instead of ignoring them. Then actually initiating conversations. He'd even met up with his college friends last month, and it had been surprisingly good. They'd all changed, grown up in different ways, but the connection was still there underneath everything. It's still hard sometimes, Jake admitted. I still get anxious before I see people. Still worry about disappointing them or saying the wrong thing. But you do it anyway, Zix observed. This is called courage, yes? I guess so. Doesn't feel very courageous. Feels more like I'm just pushing through being uncomfortable. That is what courage is, Zeke said. Acting despite fear. Not acting without fear. There was a knock on the door, which was weird because it was 8 at night and they weren't expecting anyone. Jake opened it to find a young woman who looked nervous. She was holding some papers and had an official ISP badge on. Hi. Sorry to bother you. I'm from the exchange program. We're doing some follow-up interviews with successful matches. Would you both have a few minutes? BC. Jake looked at Zeeks, who gestured that it was fine. They all sat in the living room, and the woman pulled out a tablet to take notes. So, I've been reviewing your file, she said. You two had a rough start. The notes from the first 2 months indicate minimal interaction between host and guest. But then, something changed dramatically. There was a maintenance call, and after that your match success metrics shot way up. Can you talk about what happened? Jake and Zix looked at each other, and Jake couldn't help but smile. The heating system broke. Zix ended up in my bed because they were too cold. The woman's eyes widened. Oh, that must have been awkward. Extremely awkward, Zix confirmed. It violated multiple social protocols for my species and his. But it was also the best thing that could have happened, Jake added. We were both hiding from each other, being polite but distant. The equipment failure forced us to actually talk, to be vulnerable, to see each other as people, instead of just weird strangers sharing space. The woman typed quickly on her tablet. So you'd say the crisis brought you closer together? The crisis made hiding impossible, Zix said. We were both very cold in our own ways. Being forced together made us realize we did not have to stay cold. The interviewer asked more questions, took more notes, and eventually left with thanks. After she was gone, Jake and Zix went back to the cultural exchange night. They finished the holographic art performance. Then Zix asked questions about Earth music that Jake tried his best to answer. Around midnight, as they were both getting ready to call it a night, Jake's phone buzzed again. This time, it was his ex-girlfriend. The message was long. Something about closure and moving forward, and hoping they could be friends someday. 6 months ago, that message would have ruined Jake's whole week. Now he just felt kind of neutral about it. Some things were in the past. And that was okay. You seem less distressed by communication than before, Zix observed. Yeah, I guess I am. It's weird. But I think I'm actually doing okay. Not perfect. Still got issues. Still anxious about stuff. But okay. I am also doing okay, Zeke said. I have begun communicating with my family again. Small messages. But it is progress. They are surprised I have extended my exchange period. They thought I would return after 1 year feeling defeated. Are you going to tell them the real reason you're staying? Jake asked. Zix's skin shifted through several colors. I have told them I am continuing important research. Which is true. I am researching human friendship and finding it very worthwhile subject matter. Jake laughed. Is that what we are? Research subjects for each other? Ah, Perhaps. Or perhaps we are just two beings who were cold and alone, and found we are warmer together. 2 years later, when Zix's extended exchange period was coming to an end, Jake felt genuinely sad about them leaving. They'd become actual friends. The kind of friend Jake thought he'd never have again. They knew each other's weird habits, had inside jokes, could tell when the other was having a bad day just by looking at them. On Zix's last night on Earth, they were packing up their belongings when Jake heard a familiar sound. The thermal regulator was making weird noises, clicking and humming wrong. Zix came out of their room with an expression that might have been sheepish if Jake was reading their alien features correctly. "The thermal unit appears to be malfunctioning again," Zix said. But their translator pendant sounded almost amused. "Again? Really? After 2 years of working perfectly?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "That's awfully convenient timing." "Yes, very strange coincidence," Zix agreed, not even trying to sound convincing. Jake laughed and grabbed the extra blankets from his closet. "You know, you could have just said you wanted to hang out on your last night instead of sabotaging your own equipment." "I have no idea what you are implying," Zeke said, but their skin was glowing with warm colors. They ended up on the couch together, wrapped in blankets, watching the same nature documentary they'd watched 2 years ago on that first morning. So much had changed since then. Jake had reconnected with his family, rebuilt friendships, even started dating someone casually. Nothing serious yet. But he was open to it now in a way he hadn't been before. Zix had resolved things with their own family, made connections with other exchange program participants, and had genuinely seemed to enjoy their time on Earth. "I will miss this planet," Zeke said quietly. "But more specifically, I will miss this apartment and this couch and this strange tradition we have created. Thursday nights aren't going to be the same without you," Jake admitted. "Who's going to ask me weird questions about why humans do things the way we do?" "Perhaps you will host another exchange guest," Zix suggested. "Maybe. But they won't be you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the documentary playing in the background. Then Zeke said something that surprised Jake. "You know, 2 years ago you asked about extending the exchange. What if I asked now about making it permanent?" Jake sat up and looked at Zix. "Permanent? Is that even possible?" "The program has provisions for it. Very rare. Only in exceptional cases. But if both parties agree, and if certain requirements are met, a guest can apply for permanent residency status. Would you want that?" Jake asked. "To stay here permanently? What about your planet? Your family? Your life there?" "My life is here now," Zeke said simply. "My family and I have made peace. I can visit them. But this apartment, this city, this friendship we have built, this feels like home in a way my birth planet never did." Jake felt something warm spread through his chest. 2 years ago, he'd been so isolated, so convinced he was better off alone. And now here was someone, an actual alien from another planet, saying they wanted to stay because of the life they'd built together. "Then let's do it," Jake said. "Let's figure out the paperwork and make it happen." Zix's skin erupted in those same brilliant colors from 2 years ago, when Jake had first mentioned extending the exchange. Joy and hope and gratitude all mixed together in a light show that filled the dim living room. The next morning, instead of saying goodbye, they went together to the ISP offices to start the permanent residency application. It would take months, maybe a year, but they'd figure it out. They'd figured out everything else together, after all. And if the thermal regulator mysteriously malfunctioned a few more times during the application process, well, neither of them mentioned it. Some things were just better left as happy coincidences. Because sometimes you need equipment to fail before you can realize what's really working. Sometimes you need to wake up with an unexpected visitor in your bed before you can understand you don't want to be alone anymore. And sometimes the universe brings you exactly what you need in the strangest possible way, and all you can do is be grateful and hold on tight.